Now, what could be more detached from politics than art? Well, art shouldn't be and isn't really detached from politics, but one of the affectations, one of the ideologies taught in art schools and taught in art magazines, most of which are funded by the very rich, is that art is something above politics. Art is something separate from politics. When I was at the University of Illinois during the Kent State uprisings and the time I got beaten up by the police, it was 3 or 4 police clubbing me. They were in there windmilling me. My head was covered with blood, and it was an incredible situation in that there was students screaming and rioting, and they dragged me into this police car and started, students started stoning the car. Because it had police on, except I was in it, you know, and they surrounded the campus police jail so they couldn't get me to the hospital. They finally sneaked me out the back door and got me into the hospital. If there are people who want to come in, why don't you just let them in? There's sort of space around here, seats here if you want. There was an artist there, a very prominent artist. Well, he was the son of a very famous American artist, Ben Shorn, famous artist during the Depression. Sam remembers him, and some of us artists know his work. It was very, very famous stuff. It was Ben Shorn's son, Jonathan Shorn, who was an artist. Jonathan Shorn was so horrified and moved by what he saw happen to me that he did a woodcut of it. Picture of, you know, me lying there in the street like that. I don't know, it was totally inaccurate, but I mean, it was a very moving thing. And then we did prints on the woodcut, and we sold them, and we raised money for the Vietnam anti-war movement and all that stuff. And I saw Jonathan, and I said, that was really wonderful of you to do that. Isn't it great that you could apply your art as a weapon in the struggle here? And he said, oh no, that's not my art. That's propaganda. I mean, I was doing that. So Jonathan had been so bright. His father would have been ashamed of him because his father did not make that distinction. His father's art was very political. He worked with the writers and artists projects, you know, and did things during the Depression and all that. Jonathan saw that art is something that's really quite removed and above politics, you see, and separate from politics, and that when it gets into politics, then it's socialist realism, or it's propaganda, or it's tainted in some way. In fact, the depoliticization of art was itself a very real political movement. And there are a couple of books out on this, and I had the reprints of stuff, and I wanted to cite things, but take my word for it. Norman Goldberg is one guy who's written on this, on how much of art has been how many of the art schools and artists who did realistic work was simply not shown, how non-objective abstract art was encouraged by the Rockefellers, the Morgans, and the Mellons. Who do you think owns the art world? Who do you think buys the art? It's the Mellons, the Morgans, the Rockefellers, and the DuPonts, and the Hartfords, and the Lees, and various others. Art is an area of investment for them. The museum you got in New York is called the Huntington Hartford Museum, isn't it? It's not too many. Art is something that the rich buy and then put into the museums they build, for which they get enormous tax write-offs, and which are sources of investment and value appreciation. Someone open another window. I'm just really kind of warm. Are you all warm too, or is it just me with this subject? Artists who are political do not get shown often. I'm talking about the mainstream big East Side galleries, although that can change. Ralph Fasanella painted in the obscurity and in the he painted in, don't freeze us out completely, but for years, and he worked as a gas station attendant. He couldn't get jobs. He was red-baited out of his labor union, and finally there was a showing of his work, and now his canvases go for $25,000. It's very political because there was a public for it, and he got a breakthrough in New York Magazine, and it was shown at one gallery, and to everybody's astonishment, literally tens of thousands of people showed up, and suddenly Fasanella's magnificent canvases of street scenes and demonstrations and political meetings and all that sort of thing. Magnificent things done very crudely. You can see a self-taught artist, but with a real something in it. Now he's a famous artist. But that exception, I think, demonstrates the rule of what generally happens. It doesn't mean that art cannot also be used as a political weapon, which it can be.